Well, I heard Osama and Arun talk about virality, and if there's one person who does viral like nobody, it's Nikhil Kamath. He's a heartthrob of the world of business, a regular on elite billionaires list, one of India's most cutting-edge entrepreneurs, the man behind one of the country's most successful stockbrokers. He runs a chart-busting podcast, WTF Is, and perhaps is India's youngest philanthropist as well, aside little known about him. But at heart, he's a quintessential chill Bangalorean. Let me introduce you to Nikhil Kamath, who needs absolutely no introduction. Nikhil, thanks very much for being with us here on NDTV. I can see a lot of excitement already. But let me begin by asking you, I should come and start taking classes because there's nobody who does a podcast like you. It's hugely popular. It breaks the internet every time your podcast episode goes on air. Talk to us a little bit about that. How did this entire podcast journey came about? What's the inspiration behind it? How do you do it? How do you break the internet every time?
Hi, Vedant. Thank you for that very exaggerated introduction. The way the podcast came about is I often had people at home who I would invite for dinner, and we had really interesting conversations at home. Being from Bangalore and being from this entrepreneur world, a lot of the startup guys would be at home all of the time. And at one point, we decided we are having such good discourse, which to a large extent, in my opinion, is missing in society today, that maybe we should put a camera in the room and allow for other people to view our discourse so they might go back and do it themselves as well. So it started like that. It's a very organic accident that has had longer legs than I might have perceived it to.
Absolutely. And you spoke about startup. And, you know, for young startups, this is the time to be. I mean, there's never been a more strong startup wave in India. And, how many of you here are looking to start something of your own? Because that is something that most millennials want to do. They don't want to work in a legacy company. They want to start something of your own. So just, show of hands. How many of you are looking to start something of your own? All right, so quite a few hands there. So Nikhil, dhanda banana seems to be the buzz phrase. But, more often than not, we see that, that clear sense of vision, that clear sense of what one wants to do, what one wants to put their money on, that is very often lacking when it comes to, say the Gen Z or the millennials. Though, of course, I may be entirely wrong given the fact that there are so many young, successful entrepreneurs like yourself. But what would you say to those people who are looking for that one thing to place their bets on?
This is kind of also the reason why we did start the podcast. We kind of break down an industry on every episode and do it very much from a young wannabe entrepreneur's lens. We think of all that one might require in terms of information and access to start a business. India, I think, is at this crucial point. We've had a great decade. We've had multifold companies come and thrive. We're also in this unique spot internationally where Western economies and Eastern economies alike might be pessimistic about their own countries, but are very sanguine when it comes to talking about India. So the amalgamation of all these factors has brought us to a place where if you build something in India today that looks like it has legs, something that has a little bit of initial traction, there will be money from all corners of the world chasing that startup. Also because of how we are demographically situated and the scale of our country per se. So we try actively to put out as much knowledge that people who come on our platforms and people who talk or speak on the podcast that you see can share from their own learnings. And we've started some other nuances around solving the very initial problem a wannabe entrepreneur might have in terms of capital and funding.
Sure.
So we're really passionate about making everybody an entrepreneur. if given choice. And whatever we can think of that can be done to help a young Indian become an entrepreneur, we are doing today.
You said your brand is a wannabe one. If that's wannabe, you really make wannabe look cool. But speaking of branding, it's become an altogether different ball game these days. Given the fact that you have influencers and sort of marketing guys telling you to almost be like clones of each other, and in such a saturated perhaps market, how does your brand stand out? Because branding is a real challenge for most young startups.
At the end of the day, when you buy a product, you're not really buying the product, you're buying the story behind the product. There is this French philosopher, his name is Rene Girard. He talks about we don't want what other people have, we want what other people think they want. To make something look appealing, immaterial of the industry or the product that you might be building, I think is a factor of many things, but the focus has to be on the story uh, as much as the product almost, which was unlike how marketing and branding used to be a decade ago. So whoever pays more weightage to that, I think will do well in terms of selling and marketing today.
That's a very interesting point, that ultimately it's the story that sells. And the more authentic and perhaps original your story is, the more it sort of will be appealing. But what's behind the Zerodha story? Because you have really defined how young investors think. What is behind the Zerodha journey, and what makes it so different from other stockbrokers?
Well, I don't think I should take credit for the Zerodha story. There are 1,000 people there, and a lot of people who are far smarter and have put in a lot more effort than I might have. But if I were to summarize in a line, I would say uh, a sequence of accidents where we were in the right place at the right time, mixed with a little bit of hard work. Uh, we've been at this for a long time. I know people call Zerodha a startup, but it's almost 15 years old today.
Yes.
We were trading much before that. Uh, we caught, in my mind, what has been the biggest bull run in Indian history between 2009 till 2024 today. And we are beneficiaries of that. And I think at the core of it, we thought more community. We were not a corporation building for traders and investors. We were traders and investors ourselves, and we were trying to circumvent, curtail, solve the problems that we faced in our own lives. And I wouldn't like to say that we have achieved that outcome, but along the way, over the last decade and a half, I think we've made some headway in terms of making the process of investing a bit more transparent, a little cleaner than one member investing or trading from 20 or 30 years ago.
Interesting there. And, when I had put it out on my social media that I'm going to interview you and, what are some of the questions that people would like me to ask you, I got tons of suggestions, mostly from girls, might I add, because I described you as a heartthrob of the business world, the heartthrob of India Inc., and that's true. But your podcast is not just about business. If one looks at your podcast, it's about everything under the sun, from philosophy to media to marketing, business, storytelling. And you said something very interesting. You said nothing is permanent. In such a scenario, what does legacy mean for you? Because, of course, I mean, especially being a young businessman, a young entrepreneur, you would be looking at, the next gen sort of taking over from you, and you have invested in that greatly. But what does legacy mean to you if nothing is permanent?
Legacy, I think, means nothing. I'll give you an example. There was this psychologist who did an experiment. He took a room and put 100 people in there, blindfolded them, and asked them to say how many people in the room believe they are smarter or more intelligent than 50% of the room. And something like 90% of the people in the room said they are smarter than most of the room. We are like that as humans. We all have overinflated sense of who we truly are. It's uncanny how similar to all of us, each of us are. But we will always be like that. We've evolved like that. I think we all believe we are bigger than the individual or the mammal who comes, lives, dies, and is forgotten. If I were to take history as a teacher and look upon the greats of history who achieved so much in life and are not remembered today, I think it would be stupid for me to think that I have a legacy or I will be remembered. I'm here for a finite amount of time, and having a sense of my own mortality, knowing that I have X amount of time left. I'm 38 today, so I probably have 35 years left here. My onus in life has to be nice to people, live a good life, help people out, do the right thing while also really cherishing life in those 35 years, not worrying about what someone might think about me 200 years down the line. I feel like it's silly when people talk about living beyond their lives because nobody really does.
That's very interesting. In fact, one thing that's lesser known about Nikhil is that he has a fund for young entrepreneurs, and I also described him as perhaps one of India's most passionate and youngest philanthropists as well. And what you're doing, Nikhil, with that fund, I think is absolutely remarkable. If you don't mind, let me quickly do a bit of a Shark Tank of our own. Anybody, who would like to pitch something to Nikhil here? Just as an exercise, let's see how Nikhil backs startups. Any of you, any startup idea that comes top of mind, and if you'd like Nikhil to evaluate that. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You have Nikhil Kamath himself here. Any one of you, any idea that comes to mind? Okay, I see one. Yeah, go ahead. Can you please have the mic? The mic, quickly, please. Yeah.
Hi Nikhil, have you ever met someone who's never smoked a cigarette, never had a drink, lived the healthiest lifestyle you can imagine and still got cancer or some lifestyle chronic disease like liver failure in their life?
Interesting,
Yeah.
Nikhil.
So 20% of cancer cases can be traced back to toxins in the environment, which are majorly your household products and your cosmetics. In cosmetics, we have multiple healthier or safer options available in the market, but we do not have as many options in the market for healthier home care products. And I am the founder of Green Kutumb, a healthier home care brand where we are making products based on the science of good bacteria. So right now we are at a stage where we have done our first feedback session. So we've almost surveyed about 100 families, and we're
All right.
about to launch our website
I think that's
soon.
the maximum time you can get with Nikhil without an appointment. Yes, Nikhil.
No, it's incredible that forget the product, whatever you're building sounds interesting as is. But the fact that there are so many young people who are coming out and trying radically new things, I think this is testament to New India. We have a grant. It's a non-dilutive grant where we put out an application and thousands of kids apply. And there are so many brilliant kids who don't have the capital to go from 0 to 1. So we give them grants of 20 lakhs each and tell them go out there and build, see what you can come up with. And if I had unlimited amount of money, it would not be X number of companies that I'm doing, but it would be X into, I don't know, a million. Because there are brilliant people, and I don't know how this works, but every generation seems to be smarter than the previous one. When I talk to a 20-year-old today, I feel like quite the idiot. I mean, where they are as precocious as they are at 20, I feel like at 38, I was not that way when I was 20. So incredible to hear your story. Incredible to hear that you are attempting to build something so unique. And connect with us and we'll figure it out. But I wish you the best of luck regardless.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Nikhil, when we talk about the Gen Z, they're not just about, the millennial lingo and everything else that we make them seem about. They're also about, a sort of a larger vision when it comes to, say, performance with purpose, business with sustainability. These are ideas that, the Gen Z and the millennials are really looking at, perhaps more than any other generation. How do you see that, given the fact that you are backing so many young startups? How important is that, having a larger vision and not just perhaps looking at how profitable or lucrative a business is?
It is important. I feel like sustainability is one of those first principles kind of issue that if enough people don't pay attention to it, you might not have a world one day to live in. But notwithstanding, it seems to have, when a company is being pitched to you, the word sustainability has gotten a little bit overdone. I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but just because something is sustainable today, I don't think it has legs to sell because there is so much which is sustainable today. I feel like you need a more unique story than just that. I think sustainability in itself worked a decade ago, but today you need to find nuance in sustainable when you say sustainable.
Yes, it has become sort of a blanket word that many a time doesn't mean anything, just to sort of, but, lastly, Nikhil, your one final message to all the young entrepreneurs out there. How do they find their story? How do they articulate it? And how do they go for it?
Be you. What is cool and what is uncool in society is so evolving, so fast and so quickly changing all the time, that if you were to model yourself on what you think is cool today or who you think is cool today and try to mimic that narrative, by the time you achieve that outcome, it will no longer be cool. So I think you need to find out more about who you are, why you are the way you are, versus thinking like some lucky idiot like me on screen, or like trying to mimic yourself on me. Find who you are and be the truest version of that.
All right, Nikhil, before I let you go, I have to ask you this. You inspire so many young entrepreneurs. Who is that one entrepreneur that inspires you?
There are so many, Vedant. I don't think there is one person that I can name. Also, I would be doing a disservice to the 999 others that I do not name.
Okay.
So let me not name one, but let me say the situation that we find ourselves today in is the most inspiring thing to me, because for the first time, it seems like it's India's time now, and there is capital, know-how, and access available for anyone who tries hard enough to get it.
That's such a quintessential Nikhil Kamath answer, and that's what perhaps makes you so inimitable. Nikhil, thanks very much for sparing the time and being with us and sharing all those valuable insights. A huge round of applause for Nikhil Kamath, the man that he is. Thanks so much, Nikhil, for being with us.